Greetings, ladies and metal-gents, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called The Gardeners, written by Fex1986. When your ancestors looked up to the stars in wonder and admiration, many questions went through their heads, but the biggest one was, are we alone? So in their curiosity to learn more, they overcame obstacles that a single person could never overcome. They reached out further and further towards the stars until it finally happened, and the first of our kind reached a star that wasn't the one we normally see in the sky when they looked up. Many more stars followed, but as we found out, planets with life were far and few between. Then the day came as we found the first life that had just reached the stars. First contact was rough, as we stared at one another in fear and suspicion as we were unable to understand each other. But once that obstacle had been overcome, we, the Villanois and the Gras, became the best of partners in many ways. The friendship grew and grew as we kept finding other species, and together we formed the Federation to defend each other from any threat that came in our path. As we grew in size, as we colonized more worlds and reached out further and further in space, we started to find a curious mystery. In the beginning, we didn't notice it, but after finding what's now the Federation capital system, we started to notice a pattern. The telescopic results said that it was an upper G-type star, but what we found didn't match with anything our scientists had concluded. For around the yellow star, we found 3 perfectly matching F-type white dwarfs in elliptical orbits, dancing around the yellow star. All scientists ran simulations and concluded the orbits were too perfect to have been formed naturally, and the chance that any of the stars will pull the other out of orbit is less than 0% for the next 100 million years. But that wasn't the only weird thing with the system. For that name of the full list will take hours, even for the fastest speaking species. For the system had 12 planets with life on it, from grasslands to dark jungles to smoldering deserts to freezing tundras and everything in between. Every single species in the Federation could live on at least a few parts of the 12 planets without any need of special suits. So it was decided that this system would be the perfect capital for the Federation. After the discovery of the capital, many more systems with life were discovered that were containing life similar to each other. Evolution had made them change slightly, but their DNA couldn't lie, as many animals were distinct cousins from each other, even though they were thousands of light years apart. But another aspect gave away that the systems were somehow linked with one other, and that is the vistas. Each and every system has at least one vista that makes said system special. Some other systems had a dozen vistas. We have no clue what or who decides what goes where, but if it is created by someone, they must be ascended species, for no mortal mind could think them up. Some of my personal favorite vistas are the Dulian Mega Laser. Once a year, light hits a single giant crystal just right, that it gets bounced around towards another giant crystal until the whole planet is covered in a net of deadly lasers for 4 hours. The second one is the Vilza Rainbow Storm. 4 times a year, with the start of a new season, a massive storm will form above the oceans, and then, as it hits land, it almost looks like the liquid rainbows fall from the storm by the hundreds. I better stop here, for I'll ramble on forever on the subject. About 150 years after finding the Federation capital system, we made an amazing discovery that turned life as we know it upside down, for we found a structure. At first, it was thought that it was just a home of someone trying to get first dibs on the planet, or maybe pirates had settled there. But as the investigators went through the place, they found objects that didn't belong to any culture of the species within the Federation or outside it. But on some of the remaining computers were found parts of schematics that showed how a vista had been created in said system. Now that we knew for certain that someone had been creating these systems, we reached a new conundrum. What should they be called? Some went for the forebearers, but after intense research it was concluded they had not created a single world from any known species. So after much discussion, people went with the gardeners, for they created garden worlds. Scientists now knew what to look for. They kept finding more and more of these structures, even on planets that had been colonized for nearly 100 years. But the real kicker was, when the first remains were found, nothing more than a few molars, but it excited the universe at large. Though unable to determine how long ago the gardener lived, we at least had something. More and more species were found, and over time that scientist was able to reconstruct a gardener for almost 40%. Until today, well, we found the remains of a gardener that is complete, and not only that, oh no, said gardener has been naturally mummified, for it seems it died of what appears to be a heart failure, as they were in their walk-in freezer and laid there until we found them. So, Jerry, what do you think of it? I said as I stroked my beard with a smug look on my face. Jerry's eye stalks popped up from behind the camera as he was still working on the video we just recorded. A bit long-earned common knowledge for the scientific community, but for the common folk, perfect. Don't change a thing, he said as he clicked a pincer in approval before scurrying towards the console for the far side of the room. Feeling even more smug, I watched Jerry work to make the video even more perfect by probably inserting clips and images of things I'd just spoken of. Hiring Jerry was the best thing I'd done ever since starting this expedition. The near-perfect sight of the Kushu allowed them to notice things much faster than anyone else. Sure, Jerry was an okay scientist, but his true skills were in his ability to notice small details others would surely miss. Slowly getting up, I looked down to the planet, seeing the small lights of the dig site of the latest discovery. Though the remains of the gardener were safely in the storage capsule in my science bay, I went to put it through a scan, but the one on my station was much better and precise than the one here on my ship. Also, what to name this gardener is the hardest part, for we don't know if it's a male or female. But to keep on calling it an it feels disrespectful for all the great things the species has done. Maybe pick something that is neutral. Most of the computers are intact, and I bet we'll find a treasure trove of data. I do wonder why we only found a single one of them at each site. Maybe they are a solitary species, and the moment they were able to travel to the stars, they went in all directions. What if they only came together to mate, and those weird plastic idols were like religious figures that were connected to it? Now I wish the sun hadn't bleached all the colors from it so we could see it in its full glory. Hermer is going to be so annoyed when he hears this, and I'm going to rub it in his face, I snickered to myself as a ping went off in my comms. Speak of the devil, how glad to see you, I said as my grin grew wider. Yolkarian was a Yolkarian, and for some reason, had changed his last name to his species. Probably makes him feel better if he thinks his own species was named after him. I chuckled at the thought. Yolkurians were annoying to come into close contact with because they are slug-like, leaving slime everywhere that smells like something has been dead for days on a hot summer day. Pretty fitting for to be honest. You, Minium, who else but you? This is going to be so satisfying as I will take this from you, said as a slimy drool ran down his body, making me shudder with disgust. Sorry, but the gardener is already in my ship, and the site is completely under my control by my people. You have no chance to take anything. I laughed out loud as I waved with my ears that he should go bother someone else. Watching ship open at some hatches, I could see weapons appear from them. You wish to live to dig another site, I recommend you surrender, laughed as slime started to splash against the screen. Oh, please, everyone knows that you'd rob others of their discoveries, and that's why I was prepared for you, because we noticed your ship ages ago when you tried to follow me secretly, I said as I signaled the pilot to activate shields that would nullify anything that he could shoot at us. Having someone keep an eye on to see what he was buying was another genius move for myself. Pressing a button, I lowered the volume of for he had started a monologue about his own greatness. I really didn't need to hear the sound of someone gurgling as if they were drowning in their own spit, so close to my resting cycle. Red light started to flicker as I got hailed from the planet. I could hear screaming as I looked at the armored helmet of my head of security, Ikka, while in the background I could see dirt and rocks falling off from the camera. Sir, We need you to send a shuttle down ASAP because the ground just burst open and an antennae of some sorts is slowly rising up from the flower patch next to the building." I could see Ipa look behind him from time to time before he aimed his camera at the rising object. Making a fast calculation, I determined it must be around 100 meters tall, but then I noticed more moving parts. This was not a normal antennae. It was a dish, and a powerful one at that. Just eyeballing it, I could see that it was a high-grade piece. Another call pinged on my comms as I got a call from my science bay, as one of the scientists sounded frantic over the comms. "Sir, has anyone touched anything in the station because the gardener is lighting up, or better said, his implants?" I was surprised the word implants, for I had not seen any signs there were any, but as advanced as they were, it shouldn't have been. "No, we only have been able to turn on the computers at the site. We were still in the process of printing a port that allowed us to connect to it," Opus said, as I could see his tail wag in agitation. "If it wasn't you, then fucking I smashed the sound button to max as I started to shout at the bastard who was still in the middle of monologuing. "You slimy fecker! This is all your fault. If you hadn't armed your weapon, the gardener's defenses wouldn't have come online." A soft cough came from Erm's mouth. "If you had just handed over everything, nothing would have happened. So it's all your fault," the slimy bastard said, as if it was the most logical thing. Before anyone else could do something, a powerful light beam shot between our ships that hurt my eyes horrible. "Have you been hit?" I asked as I had my hands over my eyes in pain as our after image was still burned into my eyes. "No, sir, it missed us, thank the ancestors, but I don't think it was aimed at us to begin with, for I just noticed another dish, but this one appeared on the moon. Who directed it towards deep space?" my scientist said, as I could hear clicking of the buttons as he was typing for his life. "So a highly concentrated comp beam. Were you able to get a reading off of it, and what direction it was going in?" I asked as the last of the after images started to fade from my eyes. Looking at the moon, I was shown the dish that probably had been hidden there. "Not much, but from what I could gather, I think that it's a distress call, and it looks like it's going straight for the hearth of the death zone." I could hear the fear in his voice, and a cold shiver ran over my spines. "So who cares if it goes to the death zone? It's called that for a reason, because no life can live there," said smugly as if he was a genius. "But you forget this is a species that is able to move stars just to make them orbit other stars in pretty patterns." I could see the panic in Erm's eyes, as he seemed like he was ready to flee any second. Ending the call with I was going through all the information I had, making me come to the conclusion the gardeners are still around, and not that far away. This signal could also mean two things: stay away from here, or help me. If it wasn't the latter, then we would be in a lot of trouble. What feels like an eternity contemplating everything, I could only come to one conclusion: time to send this up the ladder and make it someone else's problem. End of story. I would just like to thank the T5 supporters: Bushmaster 117, Casper Arnholtz, Draxzoon WRE, Elijah Silvercross, Gray, John Carrington, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.